What's happening, everybody? It's Sean with reactions to the classics. Today we got a reaction to Jello Biafra and D.O.A. and their album Last Scream of the Missing Neighbors, brought to us by a friend, longtime supporter, and patron of the channel, Slade Said. Thank you, Slade Said. Appreciate you. Appreciate all the patrons who make this thing go. If you'd like to support us anyway, check out that Patreon link below. We could not do it without them. All right, Slade Said always gives great background, so let's just jump into what he said. In 1990, Jello Biafra, the former frontman of legendary punk rock band, of course, the Dead Kennedys, teamed up with Canadian hardcore punk band D.O.A. and recorded a collaboration called Last Scream of the Missing Neighbors. I've made you react to the lead-off track once during a top 10 alternative underground rock music collaborations list I made, but it's a good while ago, so it'll probably not be very familiar to you at this point. I don't even remember it. I bought the album in its release and didn't know exactly what to expect, as I wasn't the greatest D.O.A. fan. But boy, I was pleasantly surprised. To this day, I consider it Jello's best work, on par with Dead Kennedy's magnum opus, Fresh Fruit for Rotting Vegetables, exactly 10 years prior. The album's pretty short. It's only 30 minutes in total, but that was kind of always the case back in the day with punk rock or hardcore punk. It only consists of 6 songs, 5 of which make up the A-side, and then a 14-minute song is the only song on the B-side, which is highly unusual for a punk rock song. Joel's lyrics are always extraordinary, and that is certainly the case here. He's on top of his game on this album, which says a lot. Obviously, being very political, some of the lyrics will date it. Some things mentioned aren't relevant anymore, such as mentioning the Berlin Wall and the song Attack of the Peacekeepers. But most of the lyrics are very relevant today and are somewhat prophetic as to what came after 1990, I can only imagine. This album scores extremely high on my scale, as it contains great lyrics, great execution by Jello, great songs, and a very capable band delivering exactly what you need. Slade says, as a final note, let me introduce the members of this collaboration. On lead vocals, it's obviously Jello Biafra. On lead guitars, is founding member and overall band MVP Joe Keithley. Second lead and rhythm guitars is Chris Proham. Bass is Brian Gobble. On drums is John Card. And with that, Slade said, let's get into it. And let's do that. The music will not be in the video, but it'll be at a Vimeo link below. Click along and follow with us. Let's jump into it. Let's kick it off with the first track. You see it below. That's Progress. Slade said, we kick off the album with this song you've already reacted to once. It's a great up-tempo song that sets the mood for the entire album. The lyrics are phenomenal, considering these lyrics were written in 1989-90. The song begins with a sports-like chant that purposely misspells mall as mall, M-A-L-L as M-A-U-L, just to set the tone. All right, I'm going to the lyrics up as always. Thanks again, Slade Said. The style of music, you always got to be ready to hit that pause button, man, because I go right up to the end. I mean, it's basically about gentrification, right? I mean, this is like incredibly really forward-thinking about what is going to go on here, right? First of all, they're taking over, the mall's coming in. Excuse me, pardon my greed. You're evicted, time to leave. Don't matter if your family's lived here 30 years, right? The old right of way, they can take your house. So you don't really own your house because they could come in and take it whenever they want. Give you fair market value and take it away. We're tripling the rent. Time's up. The sheriff's here. Too bad if you freeze out in the street. And then he just kind of goes on. He even talks about the old neighborhood whose soul slowly died, been gentrified. That's progress. Progress doesn't make you feel good inside. Running, cameras catching you, running red lights, schoolrooms with no windows, computer picture career at 15. Universal price code IDs, and records where you've been, when you're sick, and what you eat. For every spy in government, there's 50 private eyes. Like all of this stuff, man. Like he is just, there's millions on file at the touch of a, like he knew like exactly what was going to happen before. Just that's kind of insane, man. Kind of insane. And the guitar work on here by Joe was just absolutely fantastic and great songwriting. So perfect way to start this album. Next up, we have Attack of the Peacekeepers. The second song of the album, Slade said, follows the style of the first song. This is another up-tempo punk song. The lyrics here are very much a sign of the times before the Soviet regime collapsed and the Cold War was on everyone's mind, which is a crazy time, guys. I grew up in that. Alas, some signs show we could be moving back in that direction. Yeah, it's crazy. Attack of the Peacekeepers. So, I mean, yes, it mentions the Berlin, and I'll get to that in a minute, you know, but like, It basically just, I mean, nothing's changed, right? In 2024, I'm feeling this. Army ads look cool. I signed up right away. Besides, the only way you could find a job. So, I mean, here where I live in the United States, kind of, that is who they've targeted, the Army and people for 40 years. Now, if you're watching this and you join, you're not in that group. I'm not saying everybody, but they target those who don't have a lot of other options, or, you know, tempt you with the money because you can't find a job. You know, people come from lower income. And I realize other people go in there for other reasons, just because they want to serve their country. It's a good career because you can serve 20 years, you can retire. I get all that. I'm just saying, he's right on this. So send in the clowns. The NATO circus is here to protect you. So someone's in danger, whether you want the help or not, they're going to come on in. Your choice must be ours. Yankee corruption or the big bad Soviet threat? It was one or the other during the Cold War, right? Even throw out the top guns here. And attack of the peacekeepers, attack in one of the places that come to visit and decide to stay. Yeah. Guarded by soldiers on acid during night watch and generals who care only for fat pensions and bribes. If they don't scare the commies, nothing will, except maybe our Bradley tanks tripping over themselves. Both powers have one goal in mind. So this is Berlin, to keep Germany divided, never strong enough to start another world war. So with Berlin type walls, when they came to visit, we all decided to stay. So everybody occupied Berlin, right? It's really well done and not any different. Insert whatever you want in there to Berlin, any peacekeeping mission, and it's going to fit today. Next up, we have I Wish I Was in El Salvador. Slade said between 1980 and 1992, El Salvador was going through a civil war, and USA supported the government mostly through financial aid, but Jello took it a bit further on the song, which contains some great lyrics as he portrays the main character as a very trigger-happy soldier. Quote, his toy gun looked real. I had to defend myself. I'm always looking for excuses to defend myself. All right, Wish I Was in El Salvador, which El Salvador is only a part of it. It's like a place center. I remember when it was big when the U.S. was in El Salvador, when Reagan was president. He liked to invade other places. But he's kind of showing, like he's taking you through this thing. Used to be in a gang till I beat a kid half dead in a video arcade. Judge gave me a choice, jail or the Marines. Best time I ever had was being an MP. So he got out of what he did wrong and joined the military, which he's going to get out of what he did wrong in a little bit too. Wish he was in Salvador for, he could kill the poor. More gang busts after I'm discharged. Got an offer from the police. Surprise. We'll wipe your record clean if you'll become one of us. You've got just the skills we need. So he ends up joining the police force. And then instead of getting arrested. And then one of my level-headed uniformed friends shot a handcuffed 12-year-old to death in the back of their patrol car. And that's where we got the line that Slade said, shared with us. This toy gun looked real. So, the amount of these things that actually happened after he wrote this song is, or things similar, is insane. Commander says we got to hold the line till the TV cameras leave, then we'll fire away, make my day, just like good old Kent State from 1971. My man Neil Young wrote a fantastic song about that. So, I bet the authority hates Jello. I bet they really loved him when this thing came out. Speaking of authority, let's go to Power is Boring. So like I said, next up we have a song which continues the musical style we've heard so far. In this song, Jello contemplates how it is actually not great to be a dictator. All right, Power is Born. Once again, Joe on the guitar and John on the drums were fantastic. And I meant to mention and shout out Brian on the bass on the last song on I Wish I Was in El Salvador, because he was great on that. We haven't heard him a ton on here, but just talking about becoming, when you get all the power, it takes it around a dictator, but once you have it, you think it'd be fun, but no, you can't do anything. Bodyguards are with you all the time, and you're always trying to protect that power. And you're always wondering who's trying to kill you, right? And he's got some shout outs to Noriega, who was a dictator in Panama, Gaddafi, who was a dictator in Libya, 3,000 shoes. Imelda Marcos famously had, tons of shoes. So there are some shout outs there. They're a little bit dated, but they're historical, but it works. And he said, then he kind of brings it around to them, right? Now they're the headliners. So he kind of talks about that. Hot damn, we're the headliners at last. So whatever power you get, it just becomes all consuming. You always want more of it, or you want to just hold on to it, right? That is the trick of life, right? The great illusion. And men fall for it way more than women, but men want that power. And then once they get it, they either don't like it or they can't stand to think of not having it. So really good song. Next up in the song that ends off the A side, we got to get out of this place. Slade said the fifth song and the final song on the A side is a surprising cover version. We got to get out of this place. The pace is a bit slower than the first four songs, but the execution's stellar. And when I first saw it included, I expected some kind of joke version, but it's absolutely not. So this song is really famous. I'll just tell you a little bit about it. Written by Barry Mann and Cynthia Weil, who were husband and wife and future Hall of Fame songwriters associated with the 1960s Brill building scene in New York City. It was recorded as a 1965 hit by The Animals, of course. It became an iconic song of its type and was immensely popular with United States Armed Force GIs during Vietnam War, where several studies I read called this the unofficial theme of the soldiers there, their most favorite song there. And Bruce Springsteen talked about in the 70s that this song influenced him more than any other song in his performing and songwriting. So I thought that was pretty cool. Reached 2 in the UK, was held out by the Beatles' help, and 13 in the US. 2004 is ranked number 233 on Rolling Stone's top 500 songs of all time. It's also in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame's 500 songs that shaped rock and roll list. Look, I'm sure I know this song. I just don't know it by its name. I'm sure I'll know it when I hear it. All right, we got to get out of this place. I don't know this song. I don't. I thought I might. I actually don't. Thought it was really well done. I mean, the story of it is more. I see how you, obviously in the military, you got to get out of this place. You're listening to this, you want to get out of Vietnam at the time. I totally get that. It's about him and his girl. They want to get out of where they live, right? Where they grew up, because they look around and people stay there forever and don't ever go anywhere as far as get anywhere, right? Their hair turns gray. They work really hard and they don't really get anywhere in life. So they got to get out of this place. And many of us have felt that way when we were younger, living somewhere. So the guitar work on there once again by Joe and Chris. I need to mention Chris. He's on second lead, and rhythm guitar was fantastic. And then I liked everybody coming in and singing. And Jello sounded really good, a different style. He pulled this off very well. All right, we're already to the album closer, Full Metal Jack-Off. So it's time for the single side B track, Full Metal Jack-Off. Clearly a mocking title based on the popular and great war movie Full Metal Jacket, Slade says. Released 3 years prior to this album. The song being almost 14 minutes long, being the only song on the album side, it is obviously the main song on the album. The lyrics centers around drugs, how they enter the country and how they are used politically. Some specific people are mentioned in the song. Willie Horton was an African-American convicted murderer who was frequently mentioned during the 1988 presidential campaign by George Bush. Yes, he was. And Oliver North was at the center of the Iran-Contra scandal. So this should be epic. Let's do it. All right, Full Metal Jack-Off. I mean, an epic song, a lot of stuff to cover here. The musicianship was great. The guitar work was great. And I thought, you just see a song that's almost 14 minutes long, you're going to have all these different guitar solos. And you did, but you didn't. Like, it really maintained the same chord progression and riff, right? And I thought that was actually good. It did not get monotonous at all, even though that sounds like it might. There's a little bit of change up in there. Now, let's talk about what Jello was talking about, because I read as much as I could find on this album. I read a lot more than what I'm sharing with you, because Slade said write-ups are always so good. There's really nothing I need to add to it. But, when this came out, like, this is 1990-ish, I mean, he wrote it probably in 89. And Jello's making the case that drugs in the inner cities of America, like hardcore drugs, before it was weed, now we're talking about crack cocaine, coke, heroin getting more of a foothold, but mainly crack cocaine. Somehow it's finding its way to all the inner cities. And he's purporting the fact that they, and making the accusation that the government allowed this, the power structure, that way you build more prisons, the prisons get richer, all of this stuff, right? And it keeps the poor down because they're so tied up in their drugs and being addicted to it and selling them that they don't really look to anything else. Now, he took a lot of heat then, people right now, and I live in a country in the United States where people are trying to literally rewrite history and omit some things from history books. Not that our history books were ever all that accurate, but the stuff they're trying to take out is anything like this. One side of the equation in this country would be like, there's no way that's true. It's absolutely true. Now that we sit here in 2024, if you look back on it and there's some stuff, like if you really dig into it, it's pretty hard to argue. It's pretty hard to argue. So he was like so ahead of the game on this. He was right on it. Right? Want to hide something like a crack lab? Just put it in plain sight. Only stop to refuel and load. More poison to tear more lives apart. Whole neighborhoods are going psycho. Gang wars like never before. Better lock your doors, buy some guns, and pray for martial law. It's talking about Washington, D.C. and the Washington, D.C. Beltway, because one of the most violent cities in America, especially during this time. So a huge drug problem and all that stuff. So just very, very well done and very, very intelligently ahead of his game. I like this too. It would be a little obvious to fence off all the slums, hand out machine guns to the poor in the projects and watch them kill each other off. So instead, a more subtle genocide is when the only hope for the young is to join the army, which we already talked about that, and slowly die. Wall Street or Crack Dealer Avenue, the last roads left to the American dream. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. So what little kids want to sell drugs when they grow up. Like, what a fantastic commentary. Now, if you're on one side of the equation, you're really not going to like this, but you're probably not watching this video if you support that kind of ideology, right? And if you do, then, more power to you. But wow. All right. Well, that ends off this album. It really was appropriate that a song like that took up a whole side. I realized for time purposes it had to, but it kind of needed to anyway. I usually go to my favorite tracks here. I mean, I guess I'll go That's Progress, the album opener, and Full Metal Jack-Off. But all the songs were good. There's only 6 songs, so it might seem a little silly to do favorite tracks, but I'll go with those 2 as my favorite tracks. Overall score on this album, I think it's absolutely fantastic, right? Jello's songwriting, as Slade said, is just right on. Just calling everything out. I don't know what he's done lately, or lately is in since 2016. In the last 8 years, I'd be curious. If I can assume what his take was on some things that went down in this country, but I would be curious about that. But fantastic album. On first listen, I'm going to be at an 8.75. If you like this kind of music and like this kind of commentary, I can't imagine you find it much better. I really can't. So thank you to Slade Set for bringing this. Well, let me know what you think below in the comments. Do you like this album? Not like this album? What are your favorite tracks? And until next time, guys, I will see you.